This is the moment we've been waiting for. A time in human history where exponential technologies have rendered the world more virtually connected, more empowered, and more informed than ever before. Yet, we're still suffering. A lot. So, how do we make the most of our modern tools to amplify and connect with what truly matters? To light the way, I've asked some friends to join us around the proverbial fire to share stories of discovering their purpose hidden within life's winding path and to explore the future we really want. Let's meet where community, technology, and ancient wisdom converge. Today we're here with Keith Mesecher, successful, socially responsible investment advisor, exponential technologies geek, vegan, devoted husband, and mindfulness teacher. He also happens to be my uncle. If you're interested in how to create a meaningful, financially independent, and joyfully present life, I think you'll appreciate Keith's story and glean some wisdom to apply to your life and work right now. Quick credits. Before ever becoming stock market savvy, Keith lived the life of a typical nomadic California hippie back in the 60s, seeking enlightenment through Zen master Shunryu Suzuki at the San Francisco Zen Center. Other key influences included luminaries like Alan Watts, Gregory Bateson, and Brian Swimme. After working 15 years as a green energy consultant, Keith backed his way into a career as an investment advisor. So when he's not at his treadmill desk analyzing and moving stocks, he's likely in the garden listening to podcasts or audiobooks on the emerging future, exponential technologies, or insight from leaders like Elon Musk and Peter Diamandis. We don't always agree on the direction of tech, but I have always admired his optimistic fervor for learning and savoring life. I'm so excited to be here today with my Uncle Keith, also known to many others as Keith Mesecher. Keith, I've asked you to speak with me today around this proverbial fire because you are an example to me of someone who lives the bridge between an embodied life, someone who is committed and devoted to a spiritual practice, to community, and you happen to be a total future file, emerging technologies. I won't say addict, but boy, are you passionate about it. So I feel like you are a perfect being to hear from who has been on this path of integrating exactly the three things that this conversation is dedicated to. And to set a clear intention for our time together, this is in service to people who are interested in being in community in a way that is healing the future right here. So understanding and healing the future, listening to what's emerging, and learning from the ways that we are living today.
Thank you, Rose. I always wondered what it would be like to be interviewed, and so I'm somewhat happy to get that opportunity here, and to have you doing it is a real treat. Where to start? I love exploring the possibilities for experiencing this life and making the most out of this life. And I've always had the sense that getting what I really care about from life and accomplishing what I want to accomplish is a matter of transforming myself. You know, what limits my well-being is me. I've known that explicitly since I was 16 years old. And so I've essentially been on what you could call a spiritual path since that time. I learned about Zen Buddhism when I was in high school at 16, and it just captured my imagination immediately. And and it was clearly about transformation, and transformation of my own consciousness, my own way of being in the world. And so I studied, and then I got the chance to actually practice with Shunro Suzuki and Katagiri at the San Francisco Zen Center in '66, and it was it was a really chaotic and really profoundly difficult time in my life. My country was trying to draft me and send me to Vietnam, to kill or be killed or both, and I wasn't going to go, but the options were terrible. If I was lucky, leave the country, which was all I'd ever known. If I was less lucky, go to prison. And it was the chaotic, explosive time in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, and for my sanity, I would find my way over to the San Francisco Zen Center at 8 a.m. for an hour-long silent sit, so that I had a front row seat for the Dharma talks by Suzuki and Katagiri. And I've just always sought out teachers that made the most sense to me and were inspiring. And these guys were just great. They were enlightened Buddhas, and they made a lot of sense. And so that was an introduction to formal Zen study and practice. And then I fell into the human potential movement, encounter groups, group therapy.
And what was the intention of the how did you call it, the human what?
The human potential movement was in a way the Western equivalent of Zen. It's psychotherapy. It's about personal transformation, but it comes at it from these other modalities of encounter groups and different kinds of therapy, experiential, psychological, emotional.
So you were really already, getting all systems go in the mind, body, emotional body connections at a pretty young age in your early adulthood.
Yeah, I was very lucky to fall into both of these, really.
And it sounds like it was actually the fear. There was a little fear and the tension of your times that led you to that spiritual space. Is that right? Or was there something else that led you to him?
Well, in high school, it was participation in the high school youth group of the Unitarian Church in San Diego, and the whole Southern California community of Unitarian youth churches. It was an exceedingly hip bunch of peers that were a revelation to me. I didn't, where I grew up in El Cajon, there wasn't anything like this, These kids were really something, and it was just this tremendous coming of age experience. So that introduction came through my friend Teo in that context. The later experiences came during a time when I was terrified. I was frightened. This business of dealing with the draft board and possible prison and the threat of, being sent off to war, a war which my tribe thought was a terrible thing and one should not participate in. There was no calling for me to do the right thing and go to war at that point. It was, it was just a really bad thing that was going on, and I wasn't going to do that. So I was terrified, and so the practice was a way of getting some sanity in the midst of a lot of suffering and in a sense, madness.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and certainly sounds reminiscent of other times and even one of your most current teachers and one of your teachers of many years now, Thich Nhat Hanh, who created his practice in the midst of immense terror during the Vietnam War. So Keith, before we can weave paths here, but while we're around that moment in your life, and maybe I'm imagining your early 20s, were you working at the time?
No, mostly not. I lived in my car for a while.
How Eckhart Tolle of you. It wasn't a bench, but a car. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think I could claim to be the original hippie from the city of El Cajon, and so I had a kind of an itinerant life going back and forth up and down the Big Sur coast from San Diego to San Francisco. And so that introduction to Zen really gave me a way of focusing and settling down and getting some perspective, and simply maintaining some sanity in a lot of chaos.
Keith, once you did start working, I know that you got into energy work, and I think this is really what I'm familiar with as a big aspect to your left brain element, your reasoning and analysis and considering systems and energy consumption as well as conservation and being efficient with systems. Can just briefly, can you just describe what it was you were doing and maybe about how long you were doing it, or like what got you into that? What's the important piece of that part in your life?
So I had about a 10-year period when you could say I had dropped out. I mean, I worked during that period on and off, but I one day was reading Mother Earth News and I saw an ad for a master's degree program in social ecology. And it was this full page in Mother Earth News with pictures of solar buildings and rolling hills and organic gardens and wind power and solar power. And it said Masters in Social Ecology. And I thought, you can get a master's degree in this? And I was all over it. I did a 10,000-mile summer drive to go check that place out. And that was it. That's where I was going. I had to go back to college and get a bachelor's degree in order to be able to go and get a master's degree. So I did that, and I had this awesome experience at Goddard College in Vermont. And I studied solar energy and wind energy and organic agriculture and aquaculture and the economics and the energy technologies that went with all that. And then when it came time to find a job, I realized that the way you could really make a living and do this work was by doing energy efficiency work, because it was much cheaper to save energy than it was to produce it with solar energy or wind energy.
And when you say this work, what do you mean?
Well, I mean the work of taking care of the planet
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
by reducing our negative impact of, burning fossil fuels. And at that time, global warming was not a concern, but environmental degradation was, and smog was terrible. So it was real visible negative effects from the way we were treating the planet. So, these solar and wind technologies, ways of being in harmony with the earth, they're just beautiful. I just fell in love with them. But on the practical side of actually making a difference, it made more sense to focus on using energy more efficiently and thereby saving a lot of energy use in the first place and all of the downstream effects of doing that. And the economics of it were very good. I could design energy efficiency retrofits for commercial government buildings and analyze the energy, analyze the dollars, and present it as an investment opportunity to a business owner or a building owner.
Beautiful. And you were maybe what age around this time? So you've graduated from Goddard and then...
Yeah, let's see. I graduated from Goddard in 1979, so I would have been 32.
You were my age. And then you started working for this energy company and you did that for how long?
Well, I worked in many different forms for different people, for myself, consultant, employee, for 15 years. But I had a consistent career doing energy efficiency work for 15 years. And I wound up, my inspiration for this was from Amory Lovins at Rocky Mountain Institute. And we ended up moving to Colorado so I could work for a lighting company, which spun off and was right down the street from Rocky Mountain Institute, and got to do premier projects around the country, CNN towers, and a retrofit for the utility company of Indiana that covered half of the state or so, and that was where I wound up that 15 years of work.
I love how you mentioned that you were working with people to invest in the future and the future of energy, and invest became a through line. You took your skills and analysis, and I'll add a little personal information here, being your niece. There are some things that I associate with you particularly and have been big gifts in my life. One is my 18th birthday. You opened a Roth IRA for me and basically said, trust me, this is a very good idea. Start putting money here. And for an 18-year-old in the United States, not only is that not so common, especially, I'm not upper class, I'm middle class, sometimes even lower middle class, but whatever. So you gave me some very sound advice, and it has stayed with me, and this will come back to what you're doing today. You also, along with my Aunt Marge, gifted me when I graduated university at UC Santa Cruz in 2010, a book by John Robbins called The New Good Life. And this book lit all the lights. This felt revolutionary for me. And for those listening, if you're not familiar with John Robbins, he's the son of the Baskin-Robbins empire. And he has a beautiful story of his own, but really got in touch with what matters and putting your economics in in alignment with your values, spending in alignment with your values, and letting your dollars vote for what you believe in. And I also associate with you 6 a.m. meditations with Aunt Marge. in your beautiful home in San Diego, looking out over the rising sun in silence, besides the sound of sipping white tea, which you make religiously in the morning. And, you know, there's no way I'll be meditating as long as you do yet. And your sparkling eyes every single time you talk about your love of the universe, and as well as your passion and curiosity around technology. So these are the things that I associate with you, and I come to you. You are an elder in my life, so to speak, and I'm not talking about age. And so after you were working at Amory Lovins, and maybe even further along the line than that, I want to jump cut forward into the work you're doing today as a conscious investment advisor, investing in companies you believe in for the future, not only for me, but for your clients and people who have a lot more capital to make an influence. And I'd love to hear, what got you into that exactly? I know the story, but other people don't. And what feels alive for you today? I'm sure you've answered that question many times, but today, thinking about your decision to become an investment advisor after all of your learning.
So I had never imagined doing work as an investment advisor. That had never occurred to me. But Marge and I got on a path to become financially independent. And we were following a program by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, who wrote a seminal book called Your Money or Your Life, Transforming Your Relationship with Money. And that captured my imagination. We both thought, this is a really good idea. This is a good path. So so we started being very conscious about what we spent and how we earned money. What you do in that program is you evaluate the money that you spend based on what it costs you in terms of your life energy. And so you know what the real cost is of the money you spend. It's your life, it's your time. And so by working that program, we reduced our expenses dramatically, and we got jobs, and we because we had just come back from Colorado, so we didn't have jobs when we started this. And so we started saving money, and then the ultimate objective is to have investments which provide you enough cash to meet your living expenses, and so that you are free. You don't have to work for money anymore. And that was the goal. And we progressed on that very quickly and well. And it was, well, we got to the point where I need to figure out how to invest. And one of the recommendations in the book is get sophisticated about your investing possibilities. And so I came to the conclusion that the best way to invest was in the stock market. That owning shares in publicly traded companies had the highest return of any of the other asset classes, more than real estate, more than precious metals. And I wondered why that was for a long time, and I finally figured it out, that companies make the things that we value. So naturally, those companies are valuable to us. And so I started investing, and I started out with mutual funds. And the great mentor in this sphere is Peter Lynch. And he ran the Magellan Fund for Fidelity, which was the most profitable mutual fund ever, I think. And he he told me that through his writings that even an amateur could do better than the professionals because they're hamstrung by various requirements. They have too much money to take advantage of small opportunities. They have rules that they can only put so much money into any particular investment. Plus, they don't want to lose their jobs. So if they stick their necks out, they could lose their jobs. But if they do what everybody else is doing, well, you can't get in trouble for doing that. And so they kind of, there's a sort of a herd mentality. And so I started to look at individual companies, and my financial investment background in energy made it quite simple for me to translate that to balance sheets and income statements. And I could analyze the numbers for a company. And then the other side of the story is the story. You know, what does this company do, and what is their role in the world? And I enjoyed that. You know, I found certain, well, first of all, I should say it was always a given that the investing I would do would be socially responsible investing. I mean, my whole career in energy was all about social, ecological responsibility, and I wasn't interested in a career that was any less than that. So that was a given from the beginning that I would do that. And I love technology, and technology evolves. The sophistication of technology evolves at a very rapid rate. You know, Moore's law quantified this as the power of computing doubles every year or so, that's quick. That's huge.
Power of computing doubles every year.
Maybe it's every 18 months, but
Okay.
it means that with 10 doublings, it's 1,000 times more powerful. And, you know, and with 20 doublings, it's 1,000,000 times more powerful, 30 doublings, and it's 1,000,000,000 times more powerful. So it is an inexorable, unstoppable force, and basically everybody has to keep up. So, you know, your computer equipment is obsolete fairly soon, and companies just have to keep reinvesting. And so these companies, which are the infrastructure of our modern technological world, which make the chips, which make the circuit boards, which make the computers, and then there's the software and the communications, which this makes possible. This became my field of concentration because this is what made sense to me, and that has worked out, you know, very well. And I still do that to this day. And so after doing this for a few years, I realized, well, I'm already doing all the research. I could do this for other people. So I got licensed as an investment advisor, certified investment advisor in the state of California. And I let my friends know what I was doing. And one of them one day called me up and said, I know you don't have much experience, which was an understatement, but I trust you with my life, and I'd like you to manage my money for me. Someone I knew through the church. So that was my first client, and then it just kind of snowballed from there and word of mouth. And I've never done anything you could remotely call advertising. And that turned out to be an completely unexpected event, that I would become an investment advisor. And I'm still doing it, and I don't have any expectation of retiring. I enjoy the work. I enjoy the relationship with my clients, and everybody's happy. And it's just, and now, after having done it for 26 years, it's gotten a lot easier and takes less of my time. And now I have more time for studying other things that I'm passionate about.
What was
And
the series you just finished reading?
well, that's kind of embarrassing, actually.
Oh,
I
hardly.
I'm not quite finished. I'm just finishing a trilogy of books by Raman. What is it?
What's the title again? The trilogy title?
Um, it has three different titles,
And this
and
was a recommendation from Elon Musk, one of his favorites.
no, actually, if that's where this actually started. Ramez Nam, that's the author of the trilogy. But I'm a fan of Elon Musk's, and he recommended reading the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, which is a classical science fiction story. There's 7 novels, and he wrote them starting in the 40s and ended in 92, the year he died. So over a 50-year period, he wrote these novels. And I read, and he recommended reading them in the order in which they were written, which is not the order of the story chronologically. But so I did that. I read all 7 of those. And I don't read fiction normally.
I'm familiar. If I have to expose your home library is mainly, you've probably got everything Thich Nhat Hanh has ever written, as well as all of Margie's vegan living books and health books and all the plethora of things that interest you. That I found it just tickled me to know that you finished a series of science fiction, and I think it's a good wormhole, which is a very important one. That I want to make sure we get into here, which is, as someone who is as passionate about technology as you are, and you spend a fair amount of time at your computer and on devices, or these days in your Tesla. People viewing your space may not know this very authentically, hippie granola, not granola, more wheat berries eating human being also enjoys the pleasures of modern technology and advancement there. So, Keith, my big question here, and this is like a big question, and I've asked questions about this to Dylan, who's an interaction designer at Google, and I'll be speaking with Guillaume Chalot, who's speaking on behalf of ethics in data and artificial intelligence, is how do you take your commitment to improving life on Earth, to caring for our planet, through staying connected to your inner body, your well-being, your spiritual body, and how do you merge that? Like, I'm talking daily practices, principles, or commitments to keep a balance, because there are so many people in the world right now that have lost balance. And I believe that that is the root of the imbalance in our world. So as someone who I see has dedicated his life to maintaining that balance, how do you do it?
Yeah. One of the pillars of my life came about when I discovered the story of the universe. And I was introduced by Michael Dowd to Brian Swim's work, who is a mathematical cosmologist, a physicist. And he presents the whole story of the universe. And I love science, and I love learning about the world through science. And he presents the scientific study of the birth and the evolution of the universe, the complexification through 13.8 8 billion years, the developmental process, looking at the universe as a being that is developing through time. So it's, we think of evolution normally in terms of life, going back 4 billion years on Earth, but, he takes it the full spectrum of the whole evolution of the universe. And that really captured my imagination. It's so magnificent. When you see the universe from the perspective of the Hubble Space Telescope, and you see galaxies merging and stars exploding in supernovas, and learn that the atoms of our bodies were made in the center of stars, which exploded, and then out of that planets formed, solar systems formed, and we come out of one of those planets, the Earth, and it evolved into life and into everything that we know today. So I have this scientific story which tells me we are a part of the evolution of the universe. And so a great question is, what is our role in the evolution of the universe? And I like to think in those terms. And I, so in the middle of the study of the universe, one of the things that Brian Swimme said was, if what we're talking about is true, we need a deep practice in order to embody it. So I got turned on to the story of the universe in 2005, and in 2009, I discovered Thich Nhat Hanh, and went to a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh at Deer Park Monastery in Escondido, just up the road from here in San Diego, and spent a week, 5 days in this retreat, and just fell in love. I fell in love with Thich Nhat Hanh, with the mindfulness practice that he taught, with the community that knew how. You could just see it in these monks and these nuns and these enlightened lay practitioners, that they really knew. The monks and nuns know how to live together in harmony, and the lay practitioners are extraordinary in their own right. And so that became the deep practice, and so I merged that with the cosmology, which provides a story. And it's a beautiful complement to the mindfulness meditation practice. And so this, it's led me to spending 2 or 3 hours every morning in meditation, just taking this in as deeply as I can, and reflecting on ideas like, we are this universe in conscious self-awareness. My thoughts aren't exactly mine. They are the universe reflecting upon itself. And these eyes they're not exactly my eyes. These eyes belong to the universe. The universe is seeing itself through my seeing. And this is ancient wisdom, but now it's grounded in science as well. This intuition that we are the whole cosmos, and it shows up uniquely in each of us and in everything. To say I'm the cosmos is not an ego trip. It's true of you, it's true of everyone else, it's true of every speck of dust floating unseen through the air around us, is the whole cosmos comes together as us. And it feels fabulous to sink into this mode of consciousness where there's no separation between anything and anything and anything and the whole thing. So Thich Nhat Hanh coined the term interbeing for this. We inter-are. I'm I because you're you. I'm here because you're there. And everything about us is relational. We inter-are with all of the other beings in the universe and with the universe as a whole. And this intuition of wholeness is what's missing in our world and in humankind, is we're just fascinated by what we can do. And then we think of ourselves as a separate self. And so we're trying to figure out how we get what we want and how we manipulate the world so that things work out the way we want them to. And then we're anxious about this because things are never going to turn out the way we want them to. We're doomed to fail in making the world live up to some idea that we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if we see ourselves as completely integral to all of reality, then there is, in a sense, nowhere to go and nothing to do, which was a teaching of the 9th century Chinese Zen master Lin Chi, who was the beginning of the lineage that Thich Nhat Hanh is the 42nd generation in the lineage of Lin Chi.
So, Keith, I want to pause there because we've gone on this spectacular journey, and you've just expounded beautifully between worlds and scope. I love the idea of imagining someone telling Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg nowhere to go, nothing to do. Put that next to go fast and fail fast and break things, fail fast, fail often. Like the mindsets and modes that we've been on that has been influencing and driving a lot of this innovation. I was listening to an interview between Sergey and Larry Page, the co-founders of Google, this morning, and their rules for success. And as a personal reflection, as someone who's studied people and I coach people and leaders to speak publicly, it's very clear how thoughtful both of them are. And it's very clear as well, as Simon Sinek would say in his latest book, that they are playing an infinite game. They are really thinking long term, which maybe is a titch different from the way that Facebook operates. In terms of at least rewards. But in either case, something that is also clear in watching Larry and Sergey with a wide view is, as I've seen in many very, very smart people and very cerebral people, is there's a bit of a disconnect in the body and the mind. And I see it in small things like not much activation in muscles in the body when they speak. And I learned just the other day, heart math there are so many beautiful outcroppings of people exploring this space today. So this is one of many fractal conversations in the same gushing of evolution right now, is just how do we integrate all that we know and all that we are? And how do we live the truth of nowhere to go, nothing to do, while we play, while we respect yin yang, which we just passed Mother's Day the other day, and I finally learned the origin of Mother's Day. Do you know the origin of Mother's Day?
No.
Turns out that this is a day that was originally made for women. It's mothers plural, who were rising up to speak on behalf of their sons at war. And they were actually saying an outcry to say, stop it. We are in the wrong direction. And it was a powerful beginning of a movement, but a little bit ahead of its time. So what is her name? She's right here on my desktop. Julia. Here we go. I'm going to read this. Julia Ward. She wrote this for Mother's Day, and it's relevant, otherwise I wouldn't read it. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking of carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender to those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. And so
Wow.
this is that not extraordinary? And what we know, at least most of us in the US, is probably Hallmark made it, right? You know, probably. Anyway, what is Mother's Day? Look at these beautiful roots. And this has been for a long time. So how to respect this yin yang balance of living where the body is integrated as well. And so, Keith, as you mentioned, as a fan of Elon Musk, and knowing that we are all equal, as powerful and beautiful and brilliant as some of these thinkers are, and particularly men who have gotten a lot of acclaim and had a lot of results in the world. Imagine we're sitting in a circle with Elon, with Mark. Let's bring in Ariana Huffington, who wrote Thrive and changed my life, and bring in Oprah, who's also leading change, and Michelle Obama, and just all these beautiful leaders, right? And we're sitting around the huge circle, and we'll just call that circle Earth, but we can all hear each other somehow. Okay, so imagining we can hear each other, and imagining you get to speak particularly to the leaders you're respecting and following. As a practitioner of embodied practice, is there anything that you would wish to share with them or ask of them as brothers on the earth?
Well, I think what spiritual practice in general offers is the practice of enjoying what you're doing in the present moment, being fully engaged, fully 100% committed to what you're doing in the present moment. Now that could be building Teslas, you know, running SpaceX, which I learned has 8,000 employees, in addition to doing Tesla. I mean, you know, what I would hope is that he's having a really good time doing this, you know, and that he's enjoying what he's doing. And, you know, the greatest gift that there is the gift of non-fear. That's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. And and so to be able to do whatever it is that we're called to do in this world, whatever we can do to ease the suffering and increase the well-being of the world, people, animals, plants, minerals, as we say in the Buddhist practice. You know, it's possible to do it for its sake in the present moment. You can't do it any better than if you give it your full attention and you love what you're doing. I mean, sometimes it's horrible. You know, life requires that, you know, some stuff's just got to get done, and it doesn't matter whether you hate it or not, you know. Or
Elizabeth Gilbert calls that the shit sandwich, and she says it comes with every wonderful livelihood there is. There's always the grit.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, what you do when the toilet overflows. You know, you deal with it. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But so it isn't necessarily fun, pleasant all the time. But in general, if you are fully engaged in what you are doing, you're making the most of it. And you will derive pleasure and satisfaction from doing your best. I thought of doing your damnedest.
There you go. There you go. And Keith, I think there's probably no better way to complete this conversation than that. To fully give oneself to what they're doing, what we are each doing, to listen to what brings us to life, to take the time and space we need to digest so that we can stay connected to that, which I know is a big part of your meditation practice or working in the garden. I love that I heard things I've never heard before in this conversation and thought about things in a little bit of a different way. And I want to make sure that anyone who's interested in following your work and wants to take their mindfulness practice deeper, that I'll leave links as well for others to hear your meditations and your Dharma talks and be able to follow the beautiful work you're doing. And I deeply believe that bringing more mindfulness and embodiment, as well as passion and joy, continuing to foster that is really a mutually transforming path, both for ourselves and for the work we're doing. So thank you for being a catalyst of transformation in my life, as well as joy. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And may your light continue to shine in this universe. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Rose.
Thanks for joining us on Path and Purpose. Before you go, is there something you want to take with you? Perhaps a story that sparked a new thought or feeling for how you want to live closer to what matters most. Add your voice to the circle by leaving a note in the comments, and we hope you'll continue walking the path with us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube for stories from future guests about making meaning in this emerging world. Until then, let's be safe and have fun.